The baby was fine. That's what the doctor said. But it wasn't the words that stuck, it was the way his hand shook as he pointed at the screen, like he'd just uncovered something too dangerous to speak out loud. My name's Joe. 37 years old. Marine. 2 weeks back from Kandahar after an 8-month deployment. I'd been through mortars, desert ambushes, and nights so black you couldn't see your own boots, but nothing prepared me for what happened in that sterile Phoenix clinic. Melissa, my wife, lay on the table, belly slick with ultrasound gel. She kept glancing at me like she always did, like she was trying to decode the expression on my face. 6 years of marriage and she still hadn't figured out that Marines are trained to stay calm even when everything's on fire. Sir, Dr. Bradley Richardson whispered, his voice dry as paper. You need to leave immediately, and call a lawyer. For a second, I thought I misheard. A lawyer? Why? I asked if something was wrong with the baby. That's when he leaned closer, sweat dripping down his temple. The baby is fine, he repeated. But what I'm seeing on this screen shows 32 weeks of development. The words hit me like shrapnel. The room went quiet except for the hum of machines. 32 weeks. I did the math instantly. 32 weeks ago, I wasn't here. I wasn't anywhere near here. 32 weeks ago, I was in Afghanistan, loading gear, saying goodbye to Melissa at Sky Harbor Airport. 32 weeks ago, I was sleeping in a barracks tent while she was supposed to be here, waiting for me. I felt the silence stretch, heavy, suffocating. Dr. Richardson watched me like I was a grenade with the pin pulled. Melissa kept smiling, kept playing her part. She asked, "Is something wrong? Why does everyone look so serious?" I looked at her. Really looked. The glow she wore when I came home. The sudden weight gain she blamed on stress. The way she checked her phone constantly. The insistence on scheduling this appointment, almost like she needed me to see this moment. 32 weeks, I said again, more to myself than anyone else. Dr. Richardson nodded. His hand steadied now, but his eyes were fixed on mine. Sir, were you present for conception? Melissa's smile cracked. Confusion drained from her face, replaced by something colder, panic. She tried to keep her voice steady, but it shook. Joe, I don't understand what's happening. What does 32 weeks mean? It meant one thing. The baby was conceived while I was across the world. I rose slowly from the chair, straight-backed, shoulders squared. The kind of posture that never leaves you after years in uniform. I didn't raise my voice, didn't shout. My training held me steady. It means, I said, staring at my wife, I was in Afghanistan when this baby was conceived. The weight of it hit her like a bullet. She stopped meeting my eyes, stared at the ceiling instead, her hands trembling. That's not possible, she whispered. I told you I was 10 weeks along. The baby's yours. I found out right after you left. Her story was unraveling fast, threads snapping one by one. Dr. Richardson cleared his throat, his voice professional but cutting. Ma'am, the measurements are very clear. This is a 32-week pregnancy. Conception occurred approximately 8 months ago. 8 months. The exact time I was gone. Melissa sat up, the paper beneath her crinkling like broken glass. She stammered about mistakes, about machines failing, about doctors being wrong sometimes. But it was all noise. My focus narrowed, everything sharpening into clarity, like lining up a shot through a rifle scope. I thought of Trevor Williams, the neighbor. The helpful friend Melissa mentioned in a few calls while I was gone. Fixing fences, moving furniture, being the good neighbor. Too good. My mind replayed those calls, the pottery classes that always seemed to run late, the way Melissa pushed for this ultrasound appointment the moment I came home. She wanted me there. She wanted me to buy the lie. To see the baby on the screen and believe it was mine. Dr. Richardson shifted uncomfortably. Sir, I can provide copies of all measurements, images, and reports if you need them. Yes, I said firmly. I'll need everything. Melissa's voice cracked, higher now, almost desperate. Joe, what are you doing? You're scaring me. I turned and looked at her. 6 years of marriage. 3 years of believing she was faithful. 8 months of risking my life while she built a lie back home. My face stayed calm, but inside something fractured, sharp and final. I'm getting the facts, I told her, my voice even. That's what every mission requires. The truth was no longer in question. The only thing left was what I would do with it. The drive home was suffocating. Phoenix traffic crawled past strip malls and desert palms, but inside the truck it felt like silence had teeth. Melissa filled it with words, rapid fire, desperate, the kind of talking people do when they're drowning and think noise can keep them afloat. Machines make mistakes, Joe. You know that. Computers glitch. Maybe the doctor miscalculated. Maybe he mixed up my file with someone else's. Her hands twisted in her lap, knuckles white. I kept my eyes on the road. Marines are trained to listen, not to react. Every word was intel, every pause another tell. She shifted gears. Remember when they sent you the wrong blood work in Afghanistan? Same thing. It happens. Medical errors all the time. I didn't answer. She mistook my silence for hesitation. That was her mistake. By the time we pulled into the driveway, her explanations had turned frantic. We'll get a second opinion. A different doctor. I'll make the appointment tomorrow. You'll see, 10 weeks, like I told you. It's our baby, Joe. It's ours. The house looked the same as when we left an hour earlier. Red tile roof glowing in the late sun, desert landscaping neat, the basketball hoop I'd installed summers ago. Normal. But normal was gone. To me, it looked like a crime scene. Inside, the smell of her vanilla candles wrapped around us. Melissa dropped her purse on the counter like nothing was wrong. You want me to make lunch? You barely ate breakfast. That's when I turned. Calm. Direct. Like asking for coordinates. How long have you been sleeping with Trevor? The glass in her hand slipped and shattered against the tile. Her eyes went wide, and she froze like a deer caught in headlights. What did you just say? You heard me. Her voice cracked into outrage, too quick, too rehearsed. That's insane. Trevor is our neighbor. He helped me with some things while you were gone, but that's it. I can't believe you'd even. But she was backing away as she spoke. Not anger, not insult, fear. Body language doesn't lie. I'd read detainees in Afghan villages better than they read themselves. The baby is yours, she said sharply, planting her feet like she could still control the narrative. I don't know what that doctor thinks he saw, but the baby is yours. We'll get a second opinion. You'll see. I crouched to pick up the broken glass. The shards glittered like the truth, sharp, undeniable, waiting for someone careless to bleed on them. Melissa, I said, not looking up, I've been trained to gather intelligence, to recognize deception, to separate noise from facts. This isn't Afghanistan, she snapped, voice rising. This is our marriage, our life. I stood, dropped the glass into the trash. You're right. In Afghanistan, when someone lies, they're usually trying to kill you. Here, they're just trying to destroy your life. Her face crumpled. The tears came, but I'd seen her cry before. These weren't the soft tears at the airport 8 months ago. These were messy, desperate, manipulative. I love you, she pleaded. Whatever you think happened, I love you. Love. A word too easy to say, too cheap in her mouth now. I walked past her, heading toward the bedroom. I'm packing some things. Where are you going? To get a lawyer. Her sobs followed me down the hall. Joe, please. We can work through this. The baby needs a father. I stopped in the doorway and turned just enough for her to see my face. The baby has a father. It's just not me. That night, I checked into a motel near Luke Air Force Base. Cheap. Clean. No memories in the walls. I'd slept in worse during training. The hum of the air conditioner was steady, neutral. At 0700, I dialed Stephen Parker's number, our old lawyer. Army vet. Someone who knew what betrayal meant. Joe, he answered. What can I do for you? I told him everything. The ultrasound, the timeline, the lies. When I finished, silence hung on the line for a beat. Then he exhaled hard. Jesus, brother. I'm sorry. But listen, first thing we do is get a DNA test. Second, start documenting everything. The ultrasound, her messages, her behavior. Third, we file for divorce. We'll hit this hard and clean. For the first time in 24 hours, I felt the faintest shift. From stunned soldier to strategist. The war wasn't over, it had just changed battlefields. Sleep didn't come easy in that motel room. The mattress was clean, but it wasn't the bed I'd left behind 8 months ago. I lay staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the AC, the distant sound of jets overhead from Luke Air Force Base, and my mind drifted back. Not to Afghanistan, but to Melissa. To the beginning. We met 6 years earlier at a backyard barbecue in Tempe. She was laughing with her friends, and I remember how that laugh carried across the lawn like music you couldn't ignore. She had this way of making everyone around her feel like they mattered, like you were the only one in the room. For a Marine who'd spent most of his adult life around sand, steel, and silence, it was intoxicating. She told me she always wanted to marry a military man. Said she respected the sacrifice, the discipline, the service. At the time, it felt flattering. Like she saw me not just as a man, but as something bigger, something she could anchor her life to. Looking back now, I wonder if it wasn't respect she wanted, just the image, the uniform, the stability of a man bound by duty. 3 years later, we were married in a small church ceremony. Nothing extravagant, just family, friends, vows spoken under dim lights. I wore my dress blues. She wore white. We promised each other forever. The first 2 deployments were short. She handled them well, or so I thought. She sent care packages, filled with photos, letters, small comforts that meant more than she'll ever understand. She kept the house running, paid the bills, even fixed the damn water heater once when it broke. Other Marines envied me. They'd slap me on the back and say, "You found a good one, Joe. She's solid." Solid. That's what I thought too. But there's something they don't teach you in boot camp. War isn't just fought overseas. Sometimes, it's fought in your own home, in silence, in shadows. Deployment changes a man, but it changes the woman waiting too. That's the part most civilians don't get. Military spouses are praised for their strength, their resilience. Communities rally around them. On base, they're held up as examples of loyalty, patience, sacrifice. But no one talks about the cracks. The loneliness that eats at them. The quiet resentment that builds when months stretch into years. Melissa played her part perfectly. She wore the role like a second skin. To friends, to neighbors, she was the picture of devotion. At the airport 8 months ago, when she hugged me so tight, when tears streaked down her face as I boarded the plane, I believed her. Hell, everyone who saw her believed her. And yet, 1 month later, while I was sweating in Kevlar under a desert sun, she was sweating in our bedroom with Trevor Williams, the neighbor who'd offered to help out. I turned on my side in the motel bed, staring at the cracked wallpaper, and the anger finally started to seep in. Not hot, not wild, but cold. Controlled. The kind that settles deep in your bones. Because betrayal isn't just about the act. It's about the humiliation. About the years you spent believing someone had your back, only to find out they were sharpening a knife the whole time. Melissa hadn't just betrayed me. She'd betrayed the uniform, the vows, the community that saw her as loyal. She had fooled everyone, including me. And that's when the thought hit me like a round chambering in a rifle. If I could be fooled, anyone could. I had lived my life trained to read threats, to anticipate ambushes, to survive deception in combat zones. And still, I had come home to the biggest ambush of all, sitting across the dinner table every night. The truth was out now. There was no going back. But if I knew anything about war, it was this: you don't win by rage. You win by intelligence. You win by patience. You win by letting the enemy reveal their weaknesses and then using every ounce of it against them. Melissa had shown me hers. I picked up my phone, scrolled through old messages, old photos. Each "miss you" text, each call that ended a little too quickly, each excuse about pottery classes or being too tired, it all looked different now. Every word was part of a script. She'd been acting for months, perfecting her lines, keeping me just far enough in the dark. But she'd made a fatal mistake. Math doesn't lie. 32 weeks doesn't lie. And I was done being her audience. Morning in the motel felt different. No coffee brewing, no clatter of Melissa humming in the kitchen, just silence. A clean silence. One I could trust. I shaved slow, steady. Combat rituals never leave you. Shave, boots, bed made tight. You keep order in chaos. But this wasn't Kandahar. This was Phoenix, and the battlefield wasn't sand, it was my own life. By 0900, I was on my laptop. Marines are trained to adapt, to use every tool. In war, you gather intel before you strike. Back home, It wasn't much different. First target, her phone records. Melissa's cell plan was under both our names. One password reset later, I had the logs spread across the screen like a map of enemy movements. Patterns jumped out quick, numbers that repeated late at night, numbers that spiked right after we ended video calls overseas. One number in particular. Local. Frequent. I cross-referenced it. Trevor Williams. Neighbor. Helpful friend. From there, it got worse. Calls lasting 42 minutes. Texts at 2 a.m. while I was patrolling a valley halfway across the world. Once, on the same night, Melissa texted me, "Good night, baby. Dreaming of you." She spent an hour on the phone with Trevor. Intel never lies. Second target, financial records. She used our joint account for groceries, gas, bills, everything a wife should. But there were irregular charges. Hotel rooms in Scottsdale. Dinners at restaurants I'd never been to. Uber rides across town when she told me she was home, resting. She hadn't just cheated. She'd used our money to fund it. Third target, the house itself. That evening, while Melissa thought I was still cooling off, I parked a block away from our home. Old habits kicked in, low profile, silent approach. I watched the lights, the driveway, the front windows. At 2000 hours, Trevor's truck rolled up. Not to his driveway. To mine. I sat in the shadows, engine off, watching as he walked up the path like he owned the place. Melissa opened the door fast. Too fast. No hesitation, no fear of the neighbors seeing. She stepped aside, let him in. He didn't leave for 3 hours. By the time I returned to the motel, my hands were steady. The anger was gone, replaced with clarity. I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't suspicious. I had confirmation. Melissa and Trevor had built their little world on lies, but like any enemy fortress, it had cracks. And I was going to widen every single one. The next morning, I met with Stephen Parker, the lawyer. Army vet, sharp eyes, sharper mind. He skimmed the phone logs, the receipts, the timeline. When he looked up, his voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen this too many times. "You've got her, Joe. The timeline's airtight. 32 weeks. The affair. Financial misuse. We'll push for DNA testing, and when it comes back negative, she loses the claim. We'll file for divorce, full exposure. She won't know what hit her." I nodded. "That's not enough." Stephen raised an eyebrow. "You want revenge, not just divorce." I leaned forward. My voice was calm, almost cold. "She used me, used my uniform, used my deployment as cover. She paraded herself as the loyal military wife while stabbing me in the back. I don't just want out, I want everyone to see who she really is." He studied me for a moment, then gave a small nod. "All right. We'll play it your way. But remember, revenge is a campaign, not a battle. You'll need patience. Patience. Marines know it well. Wait for the right time. Control the ground. Use the enemy's moves against them." Melissa and Trevor thought they'd fooled me. What they didn't know was that I'd already switched from defense to offense. And in this war, I never lost. The appointment was set for a Tuesday morning. Neutral ground, a sterile clinic in downtown Phoenix. The kind of place where the air smells faintly of bleach and everything echoes too loud. Melissa didn't know I'd already been there once, a week earlier, to set it all up with my lawyer. She thought it was just routine. That's how I wanted it. To her, this was a formality, a box to check so she could spin her story a little longer. To me, it was the noose tightening. When we walked in, she clung to my arm, all softness and sweetness, as if proximity could erase betrayal. "This'll put everything to rest," she whispered. "Once they confirm, you'll see, you'll know the baby's yours." I said nothing. Silence is stronger than any argument. The nurse led us back. Swabs, paperwork, chain of custody protocols. I signed my name steady. Melissa's hand shook as she signed hers. She laughed it off. Pregnancy nerves. But I caught the flicker in her eyes. Fear. She knew. On some level, she already knew. Trevor's name wasn't on any of the forms, but his shadow was in that room. I could feel it. Afterward, walking to the parking lot, Melissa slipped her arm through mine again. "See. Easy. We'll laugh about this one day. You'll thank me for making you believe again." I stopped, pulled my arm free, and looked her dead in the eyes. I don't need to believe you, Melissa. I need the truth. And the truth doesn't care about your stories. Her smile faltered. She looked away, pretending to dig in her purse for keys. Classic deflection. The results would take about a week. A week of her pretending nothing was wrong. A week of me watching, documenting, preparing. That night at the motel, I wrote everything down. Dates, times, words she said. Every detail mattered. In combat, you don't just rely on memory. You keep logs, you keep evidence. Because when the chaos comes, the paper trail is your weapon. Stephen called me midweek. Joe, when the results hit, she won't just lose credibility. She'll lose the narrative. That's when we strike. Divorce petition, infidelity evidence, financial misuse. And if you're serious about exposure. I am, I cut in. He paused. Then we make sure Trevor's wife knows too. That hit like a round chambering. Trevor wasn't just a neighbor, he was married. 2 kids. He'd built his own picture-perfect lie right across the street. Melissa hadn't just burned me. She was helping him burn his own family. Stephen's voice was calm, tactical. Truth has a way of setting fire to every lie around it. Once the DNA confirms, we drop it like artillery. No warning shots. The following Monday, I got the call. The nurse's voice was clipped, professional. Mr. Reynolds, we have your results. The probability of paternity is 0%. Not low. Not unlikely. 0. Nothing. Final. I sat there in the motel chair, phone still in my hand, staring at the cheap curtains. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped everything out and left nothing but steel behind. 0%. The kind of number no story can cover, no lie can twist. The kind of number that destroys. Melissa's war was over. She just didn't know it yet. The manila envelope sat heavy in my hands, like a classified dossier before a mission. Inside, the DNA results. Clean, cold, undeniable, 0%. This wasn't just evidence. This was artillery. Melissa was in the kitchen when I walked in. The smell of coffee, her humming, the staged normalcy of a woman who thought she still held the upper hand. She turned, smiled, like nothing in the world was broken. I set the envelope on the table between us. No words. Just the truth in paper form. She looked down at it, hesitated. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, skimmed the first line. And then it hit. Her face drained, the mask slipping for the first time in months. This can't be right, she stammered. There's been a mistake. I leaned on the counter, arms crossed. No mistake, Melissa. 0%. That baby isn't mine. She tried again, scrambling. These tests aren't perfect, sometimes they mix up samples. We should redo it, just to be sure. I cut her off. I already confirmed chain of custody. This is ironclad. Science doesn't lie. You did. Silence. The kind that swallows a room whole. Her eyes flickered, desperate, searching for some foothold, some story to climb out of the hole. But there was none. Not this time. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't slam doors. I just slid my phone across the counter. Call logs. Financial records. Photos. Everything I'd compiled. You weren't careful, I said quietly. Hotel receipts, late-night calls, Trevor's truck in my driveway. You left a trail a mile wide. While I was bleeding for this country, you were bleeding our life dry. Her lip quivered. Joe, please. I still love you. I made mistakes, but it was hard. You were gone so long, and Trevor was he was just there. I almost laughed. Just there. That's your excuse. I shook my head. You didn't just cheat, Melissa. You lied to me, to our families, to the core community. You stood in that church in front of God and wore white like you meant it. You played loyal wife while cashing in on the sympathy card. You used my uniform as a shield while you broke every vow we had. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. She was a stranger now. I pulled another envelope from my bag and set it on the table. Legal papers. Divorce petition, drafted and ready. Her name at the top in bold. You're done, Melissa. And I'm not stopping at divorce. Everyone's going to know. Your parents, our friends, Trevor's wife, the community you paraded yourself in. The same people who called you strong, loyal, they'll see the truth. No more lies. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. No, Joe, please, don't do this. Don't ruin me like this. I leaned close, voice low, steady. You already ruined yourself. I'm just removing the mask. She collapsed into the chair, sobbing, repeating my name like it was a lifeline I'd already cut. But there was no lifeline. Not anymore. That night, I sent the first wave. Screenshots of the DNA results, the receipts, the logs, emailed to Melissa's parents, to Trevor's wife, to Stephen for legal record. Each one a round fired, each one shattering the illusion Melissa had built. By morning, the phone was buzzing non-stop. Calls, messages, fallout spreading like wildfire. Trevor's wife left him. Melissa's parents stopped answering her calls. The neighborhood whispers turned into pointed stares. The exposure had begun. And I wasn't finished yet. By sunrise, the battlefield was already littered with casualties. My phone lit up with notifications like tracer fire, angry voicemails, texts full of broken words, fragmented apologies, curses from numbers I didn't recognize. Melissa's world was crumbling, and I had front row seats. Trevor's wife, Claire, was the first to respond. She called me just after 0700, voice shaking but sharp as glass. Joe, I got your email. The logs. The receipts. Jesus Christ. I thought I was going crazy. He'd always have excuses. Meetings, late calls, trips. I wanted to believe him. But now. Her breath caught, a sob. Now I know. I didn't sugarcoat it. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, Claire. But the truth doesn't get prettier with time. She sniffled, then hardened. No. You did the right thing. And believe me, Trevor's about to find out what it feels like to lose everything. By 0900, Trevor's truck was gone from his driveway. Claire had kicked him out, and half the neighborhood knew why. Word spreads fast in quiet suburbs. Faster than gunfire. Melissa called me 10 times that day. Left voicemails that swung between begging and rage. Joe, please, you don't understand. We can fix this, just talk to me. You bastard. You're ruining my life. How could you do this to me, after everything we've been through? As if I was the villain. As if her betrayal was just a footnote, and my exposure of it was the crime. But I didn't answer. Silence was louder. By evening, Stephen called with updates. Trevor's command caught wind. Adultery's still an offense under the UCMJ. Depending on how hard Claire pushes, he could be looking at disciplinary action, maybe worse. And Melissa. He paused, voice measured. Her reputation's gone. The community boards, the family circles, you've salted the earth. I stared out the motel window, watching headlights drift down the freeway. Good. Let them choke on the truth. Stephen hesitated. Joe, you've won. But remember, victory isn't always clean. Revenge can burn the hand that wields it. I didn't answer. Because I wasn't done. The next Sunday, I showed up at the church Melissa loved so much. The same one where we'd stood years ago, her in white, me in dress blues, everyone smiling like the world was solid. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. I just stood across the street, arms folded, watching her walk up the steps. Alone. No Trevor. No friends by her side. Her shoulders hunched, her face pale. The whispers started before she reached the doors. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. She was radioactive now. Everyone knew, everyone judged. And she knew I was watching. Her eyes found me across the street. For a split second, something passed between us. Anger, fear, maybe regret. But then she looked away, quick, like I was a ghost she couldn't bear to face. That's when I realized something. This wasn't just punishment anymore. This was exile. Melissa hadn't just lost me. She'd lost her identity, her shield, her stage. Everything she built on lies was ashes now. And Trevor. He was collateral damage, wandering through the wreckage of his own life, abandoned by the very woman he'd thrown it all away for. The aftershock was complete. But war doesn't end when the shooting stops. It lingers, in silence, in memory, in scars. And I was left with one question burning in my chest. Now that I'd destroyed them, what was left for me? Victory doesn't feel like I thought it would. When you're on deployment, payback has a rhythm. Enemy hits you, you hit back harder. It's simple, clean, at least on paper. But back here, it's messier. Revenge doesn't end with the blast. It echoes. Melissa was living like a ghost. Word around the neighborhood was she packed up and moved in with her sister 2 towns over. Trevor was crashing at a buddy's place, stripped of his rank privileges, facing hearings that could stain his record for life. Their lives were rubble. Just like I planned. But at 0300, lying awake in that cheap motel bed, I kept asking myself, and what about mine? The Corps had taught me about collateral damage. You can win a firefight and still lose civilians, still level homes, still leave behind smoking craters. That's what this felt like. A crater where my marriage used to be, where my trust used to live. One night, I found myself driving past our old house. Lights off. Yard unkempt. A for sale sign leaned crooked in the dirt. I sat there in my truck, engine idling, staring at the place I once called home. The memories came hard and fast. Backyard barbecues, Melissa laughing as she burned the burgers, her hands slipping into mine on late summer walks. All lies now. But the ghost of it still cut deep. Stephen met me for coffee later that week. He studied me the way he did when he thought I was holding something back. "You got what you wanted, Joe," he said. "The truth's out, they're ruined, you're free. So why do you look like you lost?" I didn't answer right away. Just stirred the coffee, watching the swirl. Finally, I said, "Because winning doesn't bring back what was stolen. Doesn't refill the hole. I killed the enemy, Steve, but I can't resurrect the man I was before." He leaned forward. "That's the cost. You wanted justice and you got it. But justice and peace aren't the same thing. You've scorched the earth. Now you have to decide what grows in it." The words sat heavy. Decide what grows. That night, I opened the footlocker I'd brought home from Kandahar. Inside were medals, letters, photos from the guys in my unit. Proof of battles fought overseas. Proof of who I was before betrayal dragged me into another kind of war. And I realized something. Revenge had given me closure, but it couldn't give me purpose. That was on me now. Melissa had her ruin. Trevor had his shame. I had my truth. But truth isn't a finish line. It's a foundation. The cost of victory was losing the life I thought I had. The challenge now was building a new one from the ashes. 6 months later, the desert sun felt different on my skin. Not like Kandahar's punishing blaze, not like Phoenix's hollow glare through motel curtains. This was softer, warmer, almost forgiving. I'd moved out of the city. Found a small cabin near Flagstaff, tucked between the pines. It wasn't much, 1 bedroom, a porch with peeling paint, the smell of wood smoke clinging to the walls. But it was mine. Mine, and untainted. The divorce was finalized in May. Melissa didn't fight. How could she? The DNA results, the evidence, the exposure. She'd been bled dry before we ever reached the courtroom. Last I heard, she was working part-time at a diner, living quiet, stripped of the social crown she once wore. A shadow of the woman who stood in front of God and promised forever. Trevor. He didn't get off clean either. UCMJ proceedings knocked him down hard, reduction in rank, pay docked, career stalled. Claire divorced him too, took the kids, moved back to her parents. His house across from mine sold fast. A family of strangers lives there now. No trace of him left but the cracks in the driveway. Collateral damage accounted for. And me. I still carried scars, but I wasn't bleeding anymore. The first weeks after the exposure, I kept replaying it all. Melissa's lies, Trevor's smirk, the sting of betrayal. But over time, the fire cooled. Revenge isn't meant to be permanent fuel. It burns hot, fast, and when it's done, it leaves ash. One night, I sat on my porch, whiskey in hand, staring at the tree line. Coyotes howled in the distance, their voices lonely but alive. And I thought, this is what survival feels like. Not triumph. Not joy. Just survival. Breathing in, breathing out. Choosing to keep moving when the war inside wants you to stop. I picked up work with a local veterans group. Counseling guys who came home broken, just like me. We swapped stories, shared silence, sometimes just sat together because that was enough. They didn't need sermons. They needed someone who understood the weight. And in those rooms, I found something I didn't expect. Purpose. Revenge had given me justice. But these men, these brothers, gave me meaning again. I still wear the ring sometimes, not out of sentiment, but as a reminder. A scar turned into steel. Proof of where I've been, what I've survived, and what I refuse to become again. Melissa's chapter is closed. Trevor's too. Their names don't haunt me anymore. Because in the end, betrayal didn't define me. My response did. And now, with the horizon stretching wide in front of me, I choose not war. Not bitterness. But rebuilding. Because even from ashes, something stronger can rise. Fade out. Time doesn't erase scars, it just teaches you how to live around them. A year had passed since the envelope dropped on Melissa's kitchen table, since the blast wave of truth tore through 2 households and left wreckage scattered across a community. Life had settled into something steady for me. The cabin near Flagstaff, the veterans group, the quiet nights under a sky unpolluted by city lights. It wasn't the life I once imagined, but it was mine. Still, betrayal has a way of leaving fingerprints on everything that comes after. Every time my phone buzzed late at night, I felt a flicker of suspicion before I reminded myself. There was no Melissa waiting at home to explain it away, no Trevor lurking in the shadows. Just old habits wired into my bones. Trust, once shattered, doesn't rebuild overnight. One evening at the vet center, a young Marine named Alvarez sat across from me. 24, barely out of combat, already hollow-eyed. He told me about his fiancée, about coming home to find her pregnant with another man's child. His voice cracked when he asked me the question I once asked myself. Gunny, how do you live with it? How do you get past the hate? I didn't sugarcoat it. You don't, at least not right away. You carry it. It eats at you. You want to scorch the earth, burn them to ash. And maybe you will. But after the fire, after the payback, you've got 2 choices. Stay in the ruins, or build something new on top of them. He nodded slowly, eyes wet, like he was hearing the words he needed but didn't want. That's when it hit me. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It was a cautionary tale, a survival manual for men and women gutted by betrayal. A way to turn pain into warning, scars into roadmaps. The legacy of what Melissa and Trevor did wasn't just their shame. It was what I chose to do with it. I could have let it poison me forever, could have become the bitter shell of a man defined by loss. Instead, I chose to weaponize it. Not to destroy, but to teach, to shield others walking through the same fire. Melissa's name? Just an echo now. Trevor's? A ghost. They don't get to live rent-free in my head anymore. What remains is the lesson, that loyalty is sacred, that betrayal is war by another name, and that surviving it doesn't make you weak, it makes you forged. When I look in the mirror now, I don't see the man who lost everything. I see the man who walked through hell, carried the ashes, and built a life anyway. That's the legacy. Not betrayal. Not revenge. But resilience. Fade to black.